Charles, President and CEO of LeadingAgePA, that represents nonprofit facilities across the state. Those numbers that I gave in the introduction probably raised some eyebrows. I know it certainly did for me when I saw those numbers. Why aren't more facilities prepared to care for, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say, the overwhelming number of people living with dementia?
Morning, and thank you also for having me here this morning. I think I'd recharacterize that a little bit. We estimate that in any given nursing home setting, about 75% of all the people who live there have some form of cognitive impairment. They may not have a diagnosis, but they are dealing with some sort of cognitive-related challenge. And so we train our staffs entirely to make sure that they can deal with those challenges and help people. But the challenge in terms of putting together more dedicated settings for this disease often comes down to funding. To really care for people the way that they need to be cared for later in the disease process, whether they're in the moderate stages or the later stages, is very intensive. And making sure that we are funded well enough to care for people adequately, that means we've got to have more staff, that means we've got to have more training, and that has been an ongoing challenge. But the need is undeniable.
And we're going to talk about all the things you just mentioned, but something that I did want to point out is that even though those statistics that I gave in the introduction are talking about facilities and beds that are dedicated for memory loss or dementia, that, as you pointed out, 75% of the residents that you have do have some cognitive problems. So that raises the question, what's the difference between residents living in a long-term care facility and one that living in one or a wing or a program that is designated for memory loss or dementia?
I think it depends is the answer. There are different philosophies on the best ways to help people who are living with dementia. Some people believe that a dedicated space that can provide specific types of engagement, specific types of programming are best. Others believe that segregating people in that way is not conducive to their ongoing quality of life, and that having them more involved with people who are not dealing with those memory loss issues at the same level have better lives. And so some of it comes down to philosophy and what is best. Other times it comes down to what a given nursing home or community can offer. Some don't have the space, some don't have the opportunity to put aside dedicated neighborhoods for these types of programs. But generally, all of the communities try to make sure that they have experts on staff or bring in expertise externally to make sure that people have the best quality of life possible as they deal with the progression.
Okay, so how does... Go ahead.
I wanted to add, because it's, so dementia care units require sort of special admission requirements. So it really depends on the person. And the other piece of the information I wanted to add is that, a small percentage, so probably somewhere maybe around 20% of people with dementia actually live in some sort of a care setting. Most of them are in the community. So this is not, this is sort of, kind of down the line when either you don't have caregiver support or you really need a lot of care. So it's not everybody who's living in these places, just a small number in comparison to who is out there in the community.
Yeah, and we want to talk about both of the things that you just mentioned. But Adam, I want to go back to you for just a moment. Safety is something that has to be a big consideration, though, for those who are maybe in the later stage or more progressed in Alzheimer's because of maybe wandering away or going some places even in the facility where they shouldn't be. Isn't safety a major issue?
Absolutely. It's a balancing act between providing as much independence for people to provide the best quality of life as possible and making sure that both within the regulatory scheme and just in terms of practicality that people have the safety that they require. So yes, wandering is definitely a concern. Falls are a concern. In some of the situations, depending on where somebody is in the disease process, there are concerns about wandering into other people's rooms and what that does from a privacy standpoint, et cetera. So there are lots of concerns in that respect that need to be addressed anytime that you're trying to care for these folks.
If you'd like to join in our conversation, give us a call. We're talking about, well, it's been called a crisis in care, and Pennsylvania in particular not being prepared for the number of people who will be diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Adam Marles, President and CEO of LeadingAgePA, that represents nonprofits.